Before the Civil War, it appears that the people who decided on citizenship were the states, because the federal government was not really regulating it at all. Citizenship was done under what we call the common law, the law we inherited from England at the time of the Revolution. No one disagrees that that's the rule that applied in England at the time of the Revolution. If you were born on English soil, you were English. And so the assumption has always been, to the extent we can tell, that the states all adopted the birthright citizenship approach. Now, the reason why this became important is because of Dred Scott. Dred Scott is the decision in which Chief Justice Taney held that both slaves and freed slaves could never be citizens of the United States, could not be legal persons, even though they were born on the territory of the United States. So Dred Scott itself rejected the birthright citizenship rule. The North, at great cost and lives, would then overrule Dred Scott once they won the war, and after the war enact 3 amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which I would say at the very least restored the rights of people before to birthright citizenship. Think about what the alternate system would be. The alternate system would be if you don't have a rule in the Constitution about who's a citizen, then who decides? The president and Congress decide. It seems to me that the people who fought and died in the Civil War to free the slaves and to expand individual liberty for all of us, do you think they would have wanted to leave the definition of citizenship, on which all the other rights turn, up to the president or Congress? One thing I think the 14th Amendment does do is to take that out of the hands of our elected representatives. That was the great fault of Dred Scott, was the Supreme Court and people in Congress wanted to change the definition of citizenship to suit their political needs. I think it's much better if it's in the Constitution rather than if it's up to politics.
Most people think if you're born in the United States, that's it, you're a citizen. And the language of the 14th Amendment to our modern ears suggests that. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. Pretty clear. Well, not so fast. The question is, what does that phrase, or subject to the jurisdiction, mean? Modernly, we tend to equate it as synonymous with subject to our laws. If you're subject to a court's jurisdiction, you're within the geographic territory. We equate the two. The question is that what they intended at the time the 14th Amendment was ratified? At the time, there were 2 ideas. There was subject to the complete jurisdiction, and there was also what we call subject to the partial or territorial jurisdiction. Let me put it kind of in a modern analogy. If you're a subject of Great Britain and you're visiting the United States as a tourist, while you're here, you have to comply with our laws. But you're not subject to our complete jurisdiction. You don't owe us any allegiance. And the court specifically says, in the slaughterhouse cases, the phrase subject to the jurisdiction was intended to exclude from its operation children of ministers, councils, on that everybody agrees, and citizens or subjects of foreign states born within the United States. As long as they continue to owe their allegiance to the foreign power, they were not subject to the jurisdiction in the way intended by the 14th Amendment. Now, all of this was designed to codify a statute that had been adopted a few years earlier, the 1866 Civil Rights Act. If you're born here and don't owe allegiance to anybody else, like the former slaves, which it was clearly designed to address, the Dred Scott, then you're citizens. Beyond that, the power to decide how much citizenship to offer remains where it always has been, in Congress under the naturalization power. It's uniform all the way up until 1898 in the Wong Kim Ark case. Wong Kim Ark involved somebody who was lawfully domiciled here, not temporarily visiting here. And the Supreme Court held, with very broad language, that anybody born on U.S. soil was going to be a citizen. But the actual holding of the case is limited to people who are domiciled here, because that's all that was at issue in the case. In other words, most scholars will recognize that the Supreme Court has never decided the issue of whether the children of temporary visitors, sojourners was the word they used at the time, are citizens by mere birth on U.S. soil,